thank you everyone for coming. We really are pleased that you're here today. We're um, here to talk about engendering the EnPAx Conference for 2026. So our agenda today is, just before I start, just to let you know that we are recording this session just in case some other people who aren't able to join us want to view the session later. And so for today's agenda, we're going to go over some welcome and introductions. We're going to explore the various conference themes, do some breakout room discussions, and then talk about some planning and next steps. For those who are new to EnPAx, which there might be a couple of you, the Environmental Peacebuilding Association was launched in 2018 and emerging from the recognition that an integrated approach to the environment, conflict, and peace is critical for countries and communities around the globe. As an organization, EnPAx hopes to foster knowledge development and exchange, build capacity and awareness, and strengthen relationships between scholars, practitioners, and decision makers for working on issues related to the environment, conflict, and peace. And it now has over 500 individual members and over 30 institutional members from 74 countries. So that's just a little brief introduction to Environmental Peacebuilding Association, or EnPAx. And I am one of the co-chairs of the Gender Interest Group, which is one of many interest groups within EnPAx. And I actually have a co-chair, Natalia Jimenez, and unfortunately she's a little under the weather and so is not able to join us today, but I have my very trusty helper and what do we call you, a gender administrator? Go ahead and introduce yourself, Maddie.
Hi everyone, I'm Madeline Law. I am the gender administrator here at EnPAx and subbing in for the lovely Natalia while she is out ill. So hope to fill her shoes, but yeah.
And just in case everybody's not aware of the details, the 4th International Conference for Environmental Peacebuilding will be June 16 to June 19 of 2026, so just under a year from now. It will be hosted at the University of Ottawa and will have in-person and virtual options. And so what we want to do is explore how to bring gender in, mainstream gender within the whole program. So let's see. In this session, what we're hoping to discuss is how gender is included in the previous conference and our goals for this coming conference. We want to explore the themes. We want to break into smaller groups, like I said, and then discuss some peer learning opportunities. So our goals for this session in particular are to strengthen our network as the Gender Interest Group and those who are also involved in EnPAx. We're happy to have you here if you're not part of the Gender Interest Group. We want to brainstorm ideas for how to mainstream gender at the conference. We want to inspire one another to submit proposals for panels, talks, art, installations, and more. And optionally, potentially develop a collaborative project to implement at the EnPAx conference. So those are the goals for this particular session. And I would love it if we could start by just having some introductions. And what we thought we would do is use some mentee polls throughout this session. And so what I'm going to do is switch my sharing over to the mentee. If you all could go to, oh wait, I have to put it in. Let me just share the other screen. So once the other screen comes up, you can scan the barcode, or you can go to menti.com and enter the code, or I will put a link for you in the chat box where you can just enter your information. And we thought this would be a fun way for everybody to just see who is here in the room. And when we go into breakout rooms, we'll do some actual introductions with our voices. And so we thought that's how we would start off. So if everybody could just take a minute to enter their name, their organization, maybe where you're from, and your email address if you want, that would be great. And I will see if I can do the same, multitasking. Excellent. That's so nice. Good to see everybody. There's lots of people from the US and Canada. Yeah, and a couple people from other areas as well. So that's great. Good to have everyone. Okay. So I will switch back to my slides and Maddie, if you wouldn't mind walking us through this slide.
Absolutely. So before we kind of go forward to EnPAx 2026, we wanted to kind of evaluate how gender was incorporated or explore how gender was incorporated in the previous conference for EnPAx 2024. And so we found that about 3.9% of the sessions, of the 76 sessions that were part of the last conference, were gender focused, with one event that was more explicitly gender focused in the form of a women's leadership lunch. We did not have any kind of data of how many speakers either discussed gender or the kind of gender identification of the speakers, but we're hoping to track that data going forward for this next one. We're looking basically as we look forward to more deeply integrate gender into the conference agenda and see how we can also make use of or try to basically improve on the data for this next round.
Okay. And so I think one of the big things that we are hoping to talk about for this next conference is that there's no particular theme that is gender focused. And so what we're looking to do is how to integrate gender throughout the 5 themes that have been identified so that we can mainstream it and so that we have gender integrated into several different sessions that are not necessarily gender focused. And that way a larger audience can hear about our research and think about these issues. And so we thought we would go to the next poll. So if you go back to that Menti poll on your screen, on your phone or whatever, you'll see that there's a new question there. And what we just wanted to poll everybody about was whether they were comfortable and or planning to submit something to the committee to be considered. And so we just wanted to see who in the room is already thinking about submitting something, has already submitted something, or is just not feeling comfortable at all about it. So if you wouldn't mind just quickly taking that poll, we'll see what people think, and then that'll kind of help us figure out how people are feeling. Okay. Good. Mostly somewhat comfortable, but several people who are really comfortable. Oh. Bit of competition between those two somewhat and really comfortable levels. That's good to know. Cool. Okay. All right. So yeah, all right. So I think with that, we're going to go and we're going to start to explore some of the conference themes, of which there are 5. And we have invited 5 different people. I'm hoping all 5, or well, 4 different people to present sort of their thoughts on how gender could potentially integrate into one of the 5 themes, just to get our brain juices going and start to think about how this might look for your particular research. And maybe also stimulate some ideas of how we could work together to propose some joint sessions if we want, and that sort of thing. So we have 5 themes. One is the extractivism, emerging technologies, and energy transition. And for that, we are going to have Munini Mutuku, who is the Senior Program Officer at the Kenyan National Cohesion and Integration Commission and Chair of the Transnational Justice Interest Group at EnPAx. Munini will present. And then we have environmental change, displacement, and mobility, which will be presented by Dr. Maha Al-Zubi, who is the Regional Researcher, Sustainable and Resilient Water Systems at the International Water Management Institute. And then we will talk about law, power, and decolonialization, which will be presented by Professor Larry Swadek, who is a professor of the School of Environment, Enterprise, and Development at the University of Waterloo. And then reimagining environmental peace building, and that'll be presented by Rehab Al-Sanabani, who is the gender and crisis specialist at UNDP. And Terry Okoma, is Terry here today, Maddie? No? Okay. All right. We were hoping Terry would be able to present the conservation, conflict, and cooperation one, but since Terry isn't here, that'll be me. And so with that, I will stop sharing my screen and I will pass the floor over to Mumini if you're ready to present us and give us some food for thought on extractivism, emerging technologies, and energy transition.
Thank you very much, Mary Rose. Good evening, everyone. Good afternoon, good morning, wherever we are. I'm glad to be here this day, and I'll be talking about extractivism, emerging technologies, and the energy transition, and how we could incorporate some meaningful gender perspective. So if you look at the theme of extractivism as it is currently designed, we are going to look at a few points, and it's looking at global demand for critical minerals. So there's a lot of discussion on critical minerals. It's also talking about green infrastructure, technological innovation, contestation of access and use of the minerals, securitization of minerals, social tensions, injustice and conflicts, and also the human and environmental impacts of this practice of extractivism, emerging technologies, and then energy transition. So the question is, how do we bring in a gender perspective into this discussion, practically and also thematically? So some of the points I was thinking about is we could do posters. Currently, we are having quite a number of women movements, women-led movements that are either supporting energy transition, supporting women who are pioneering energy transition. And we're also having movements that are against extractivism because of the destruction that extractivism is doing within their communities. So could we have posters of these movements from around the globe and what they're doing? And that would help people think through the work that is going on from a gender perspective, and in this case, from a women's perspective, how women are engaging in this space. Extractivism is usually seen to be a very male-dominated arena. So the engagement of women, and not only in the activism of against, but also in the supporting, especially in the energy transition. Another proposal I was having is, would it be possible to have stories of environmental activists, both men and women, and the work that they're doing, and especially the women, so that we can hear their stories. Many other times the stories are told and the people who are speaking are often men. So could we hear the voices of women in this space, probably in terms of posters? If we could have small clips of them speaking in the work that they're doing, if we can get that and compile that into one 5-minute clip, that would be very good to talk about the gender aspect. Another point is there's a lot of use of song, the songs of resistance. Some of them are generated by men. Some of them, quite a number, are generated by women. Could we bring that into the space and see how women speak in these songs, and also look at how men speak in these songs? Because they use the songs to support their movements, to strengthen their resistance, to pass their message. And that would be a way that would bring in the gender perspective in an artistic manner in the space. During the fourth conference, the third conference, we did visit to institutions, the conference that was held in The Hague in the Netherlands. I am sure that in Canada, in Ottawa, we'll be doing visits as well to museums amongst other spaces. The Native Women's Association of Canada, that has been very critical in speaking out for Indigenous peoples, and especially in the extractivist space and in access to natural resources in the Indigenous peoples' territories. Could we add that institution into the list? It brings in an institution that has a gender perspective in the list of institutions that will be visited during the Ottawa conference. Another idea was to look for short movies, short documentaries, or clips that have been done speaking about the efforts women are putting through, whether it's in energy transition, or it's in the emerging technologies, or it's in the space of extractivism and access to natural resources. There are civil societies that are doing these small clips, short films. Could we add that and give it one session or an evening where people can watch? And it brings in another gender perspective into the discussion. At a thematic level, it will be interesting to hear panels or discussions on women in the small scale mining sector, which is very rarely talked about. Most of the time when you talk about extractivism in the mining industry, the logging industry, it's largely male dominated. But there are women in these spaces. And allow me to say that this space of extractivism, emerging technologies, and energy transition is double-edged. There are positives about it, there are negatives about it. In my research, it showed me that there are communities in Canada, Australia, and other places that have actually accepted extractivism or mining within their own territories. But this has come through with a lot of negotiation, a lot of farm agreements, a lot of follow-up and monitoring and environmental impact assessments, very strong frameworks that are being put into place for these communities to actually end up accepting it. So it's double-edged. There's a positive and there's a negative. So when we bring in the gender perspective, we bring in both of them to show the positive and the negative in this discussion of extractivism, emerging technologies, and energy transition. And just to mention that there is a series of discussions called Amplify Her. I came across it through YouTube. It discusses women who are pioneering the energy transition. A lot of times we hear about the men who are running technology, who are doing this and doing the other, but barely are we hearing the women. So could we have a space where we also amplify the women? If we can have some of these women attend the conference, why not? And lastly, to say that last year in Ottawa, the women of Ecuador, there were 4 women from Ecuador who came in and did a press conference. They were speaking about the multinational companies in Canada who are working in Ecuador and are causing destruction. And so they were giving statements. Could we also have a space where we see all these, what do you call them, declarations or statements that have been done by women to leaders, because they're there. Like there's one that is in Ecuador that was done by women from 6 nations who submitted it to their leaders, speaking about the destruction that the multinational companies are causing in their country and calling for certain actions. Could we have such documents to showcase also the work that the women are doing as part of bringing in the gender perspective? Thank you so much, and sorry for taking so much time. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Munini. And I love all the different modalities you're talking about, song and posters and documentaries. I think that's a great way of thinking about it, and appreciate that it's a huge topic area and there's lots of different ways that gender fits into that. So I appreciate that. So now I think we are going to go to Dr. Maha El-Zoufi for environmental change, displacement and mobility. I'm hoping Dr. Maha is here. Yes or no? I'm not seeing. No, maybe not. So I apologize. We do not have a backup plan for that session or that discussion. So hopefully other people will have some good ways of fitting gender into that theme when we get into our breakout rooms. But for now, maybe let's move on to the law, power, and decolonialization with Professor Larry Swaduk.
Okay, thanks, Mary Ruth. Hi, everyone. As we say in our Global Association of Master of Development Practice Programs, happy local time. So it's interesting that Maha's not here, because I feel the law, power, and decolonialization theme actually cuts across and into and brings together a lot of things that are under the other four themes. And so I want to structure, having that in mind, what I've got to say is I basically give you how I think of law, power, and decolonialization, and then kind of map out where we might have some entry points for gender mainstreaming of within that theme. When I think of law, power, and decolonialization in general, I think of first of all the forms and spaces of law, so legal systems, right, which are foundations for decision making. I think of forms and spaces of power, so power, the ideas, institutions, and material forms of power, which constitute the basis for action. And then I think about how these forms and spaces of law and power have differential results depending on cross-cutting factors, that some of which are a consequence of colonial and imperial practices, but the other cross-cutting factors, age, class, race, gender, ethnicity, and so on. So I think so you can see how law and power in particular cut into the other themes, and then the decolonialization element is a kind of a critique of those entry points and practices for peace building, I guess you would say. I turn to Ide et al. 2021. A couple of the co-authors are here. The environmental peace building paper on the past and future of environmental peace building, because I like the structure of, environmental peace building concerns security, concerns livelihoods and economics. It concerns politics and social relations. And I was trying to at first I tried to build a matrix around how might that all look. And I kind of gave up on that idea. I did ultimately end up making a matrix that I forwarded on to the organizers here about something else, and I can speak to that. But I think of, so law, power, and security through a gendered or decolonial lens. Law, power, and livelihoods through a gendered or decolonial lens. Law, power, and politics, social relations through a gendered decolonial lens. And by framing it this way, it could lead to a variety of kinds of panels and papers and presentations, critical analyses of each of these, exposure of shortcomings, demonstration of alternative methods, right? Bottom-up, gender-sensitive things like that. We could also have theory, I think there's space for theorizing some of this stuff, and case studies where, we've got a simple Google search of sort of key issues in environmental peace building reveals an endless number of case studies, and there's so many of those. So I was thinking that we could also perhaps mount a critical literature review and compiling case evidence to see what it all adds up to. Might also be a good idea for a special issue of our journal. When I think of, I just want to say something about the intersection between decolonial and gender, because I think they both speak to the shortcomings of mainstream practices, I suppose you would call, right? So if we think of what do I think of when I think of decolonialization? I think of decentering, knowledge production. So putting at the forefront local knowledge, Indigenous women, river keepers, these sorts of things, ideas, power in decision-making, questioning power in decision-making, what is women's place and role or presence and absence. I'm thinking about two-spirit roles in conflict resolution, the obvious historical injustices of mainstream approaches to development broadly defined, and looking at women's rights under colonial, neo-colonial structures. Knowledge production. There's a Mi'kmaq elder up here in Eastern Canada, Albert Marshall, who talks about two-eyed seeing, right? Some different ways of trying to blend Western knowledge with Indigenous knowledge. Rethinking security. A lot of this stuff we've done it already, but I think we can do it perhaps in a more systematic way through maybe 3 or 4 linked panels on some of these things. Interrogating production. So we heard about extractives, but conservation is another one that pops up all the time. And the last one I thought about was in terms of equity, the legal entry points around equity, theory and practice, presences and absences, marginalization, things like that. So those are, I hope it makes some sense. It made sense to me. I did provide a 2-pager that could be shared. So if you don't know if you don't understand me, you can ask me questions, or read my 2-pager, and then we can come back to this in conversation. So I'll stop there, Mary Ruth. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Larry. This is really great. And if you would like to share the 2-pager with me, I can send it out to the group with the summary email that I produce later. There's so many great ideas in that list. So it's hard to summarize them all, but I really liked the idea of putting everything through a gender decolonial lens and kind of analyzing it that way, but so many other great ideas. So thank you so much. Okay, now if we could go to Reimagining Environmental Peacebuilding with Rehab Al-Sanabani.
Thank you so much. I'm sharing my screen now, and it's very interesting, the discussion that you talked about, Professor Larry. If I may say this while I open my presentation. It's not in present mode, right? Because decolonialization, we always talk about decolonialization and its negative impact and shortcomings on gender, but in some part of the world, it has actually positive gains and contributions. But I'm always criticized to highlight that. So happy not to discuss this theme today. So the theme that I'm about to discuss is reimagining environmental peacebuilding. And the fact that we are talking about reimagining, actually, it means that we admit that old maps have failed us. So for too long, climate change, conflict, and gender inequality were treated as separate problems, as if peace could be negotiated while the land burned. Or, for example, that adaptation could succeed while exclusion endured. Crises feed each other, and so must our imagination. So we know that women and girls experience both conflict and environmental crises differently. We also know that the forces driving displacement, fragility, and environmental collapse are the same. We know also that opportunities for women to lead, to mediate, to restore, to rebuild is the same. So 3 truths: the impact, the triggers, and the opportunities are shared. So our solutions must be shared too. So what are our solutions? To address this, I brainstormed on 3 intersections where change become possible, but I know that you can brainstorm on more during the group discussions. And the first one is the gendered impact. We know that disaster and conflict hit women and girls hardest, yet it opens spaces for women-led solutions, from water committees to climate resilient farming. The second one is women as peace builders. So we know that across fragile contexts, women are mediating land disputes, leading adaptation efforts, and shaping community governance. So how to use that? The third one is intersectionality and justice. So we know that Indigenous women, youth, and displaced communities, for example, face overlapping vulnerabilities. So reimagining environmental peace building means tackling land rights, access to finance, and legal recognition. So peace, justice, and environmental resilience can go hand in hand. But more importantly, and we identified this through a very long research that we've done with Sciences Po University, with many thanks to your association for peer reviewing this study, we found that at the center of reimagining stands women's economic empowerment. Because when women control land, finance, and livelihood, they plant trees, they protect watersheds, and they invest in peace rather than conflict. So economic power turns victims into negotiators, caregivers into decision makers, and scarcity into sustainability. So reimagining means also ending silos, whether we're talking about policy, program, finance, institutions. It means funding women-led solutions that tackle peace, climate, and equality together. It means engaging men and boys to transform masculinity and promote for shared responsibility to save environment and to promote for peace. In short, the crises are one, and so must be our response. So integrated, ambitious, and anchored in women's leadership with a focus on women's economic empowerment. This is how we build peace with the planet and justice with resilience. Thank you so much.
Wow, that was great. And I love all the visuals, Rahab. Thank you so much. And I really appreciate your perspective that the impacts that are differential for women and girls are opportunities for us to do better and to do some really innovative and creative things to try to solve all of these intersecting problems. So thank you. Okay. And as I mentioned, we were hoping that Terry was going to be able to join us today and do this session, but unfortunately not. And so I have tried to put a couple of things together, just thinking this through myself for the conservation, conflict, and cooperation. And I'll just be very brief about this. But thinking about it, there's issues of resource access and control. And so that can look like things like land tenure patterns, how do gendered land ownership systems affect conservation outcomes and community cooperation, water management, similar things, how do women's roles in water collection versus men's control of water resources, integrate into conservation contexts, forest resource extraction, there's gendered differences in forest use and conservation rulemaking, and then sacred spaces and spiritual practices, and how are these gendered, and how do these relationships integrate with nature influence conservation cooperation. I also think about the conservation knowledge systems. So this goes back to some of what Larry was saying and Rahab as well. How do we think about traditional ecological knowledge and how these gendered knowledge systems contribute to or conflict with formal conservation approaches? Species monitoring, women's and men's different observational knowledge on wildlife and ecosystem changes. Seed saving and biodiversity, women's roles in agricultural biodiversity and potential conflicts with industrial agriculture. And this also goes back to some of the extractivism conversations that we're having. And then climate indicators, what are the gender differences in reading environmental science and predicting seasonal changes, particularly disasters, those types of things. And then also thinking about labor and roles. So care work, how does unpaid care and environmental work, such as cleaning water or attending home gardens, affect conservation participation? What are some seasonal migration patterns that gendered labor, such as gendered labor migration and its impact on conservation management, and youth and elder management? So how are changing generational gendered roles affecting conservation knowledge transfer? So those are just some initial thoughts from me on this topic, and I would be very happy to hear from other people on their ideas when we get into the breakout rooms. And so thank you to all of our presenters. We really appreciate you doing that. And now we're going to go into some breakout rooms, and I'm hoping we don't lose anybody in this process. We're hoping that we can just have some space as individuals to kind of share how we're thinking about our particular research areas and how those might fit into the different themes. And in particular, if you bring a gendered perspective in your research, how you're going to be integrating research into your, integrating gender into your research, and how you might be thinking about proposing something for the conference itself. So we are going to go into 2 different breakout rooms, one with me and one with Maddie, and we'll take about 15 minutes and we'll go around the room and do quick introductions with everybody saying their name, their organization. And then after that, we'll open the floor to people to talk about their research and how they're thinking about their research in terms of the conference. And if you do bring a gender, I know we have some people in the group who are not gender experts, but if you are going to be presenting something for the conference and it's not gender focused, we'd still like to hear from you as well. And then we'll be using the Menti poll again. So I will just get that to the next question. And so if you wouldn't mind just putting in briefly some answers to the question of how does your research fit into one of the conference themes with your name, that would be really great. And that would be a way for us to, after the meeting, think about what are all the different ideas out there, and then we can maybe help to stimulate some group discussions on how we might present things together as a group. So with that, Maddie, how are we doing on the breakout rooms?
Yep, all ready.
We're good. Okay.
And
all right. All right. Sounds good. Oh, wait. Welcome back, everyone. Okay, we are a somewhat smaller group now, and we were going to next talk about how we might do a collaborative project as a group. And we were going to go into breakout rooms, but I'm wondering if it would be fine to just stay in this group. I don't know. What do people think? Stay in this group. Is that what you're saying, Carl? Yes. Okay. Then I will get back to the right slide. Okay. So yeah, what we thought we would just open up the floor for this one and talk about how we could collaborate as an entire group on an idea. And there were lots of ideas that came out of our small group meeting. I'm not sure about yours, Maddie, but maybe we could continue to just develop some of those thoughts as a group. I put together this very rough list of things like doing a policy brief together, having a cocktail hour or meet and greet, speed presentations of our work, art exhibits. Munini talked a lot about the various different modalities that we could explore, develop a joint training, and raise money for an art project or something else. But I think there were lots of better ideas that came from the group, which I love. So I guess what I'm wondering is, do we want to further refine some of these ideas now and talk about how we can actually prioritize and bring some of these together? So I am going to open the floor. Feel free to just unmute and chat, or you can raise your hand if you want. But I would love to hear people's thoughts, and I'm going to stop sharing.
Can I just ask what happened in the other group?
Oh, all right. That's a good idea. Maddie, do you want to share, and then I can share?
Sure. So we had a bit of a conversation about, and this kind of does lead to this conversation about kind of how we approach it at the conference as well. But we had a conversation about indicators and the tricky task of basically taking, I'm sorry for using exactly the phrase that you didn't want to use, but not taking the kind of bums in seats approach to indicators when measuring inclusion in something like the kind of Jeff project that EnPAx is working on, measuring kind of inclusion of marginalized folks in Jeff supported programming. And so not taking the bums in seats approach by saying there's X number of, female identifying people in a awareness raising, session, for instance, and then measuring that rather than looking to measure kind of meaningful impact or what meaningful inclusion looks like, and find the struggle of trying to find indicators that would encompass more meaningful ways of inclusion, but also thinking about how at the conference we could maybe have a panel on how different organizations have approached that, or the work that perhaps UNDP are doing based on perhaps comments. But did I accurately say anything else that anyone wants to add there if I didn't fully capture it?
I think, yeah, you captured it very well. So it is like one thing relevant to the conference, that we can have something on gender, environment, and peace nexus, but then another project not linked to the conference in particular, how to work on a project together to have a round table, inviting different people that are in particular engaged in evaluation to come up with indicators that could assess the nexus between gender, environment, and peace, to document the impact and advocate for more resources in this field, as many of the existing indicators usually counting indicators, but do not document the transformative impact of engaging women in environmental sustainability and resolving conflicts, such as change in transforms in social norms, harmful attitudes, change at the policy level, but also changed in safety, security, and other measures, and bringing more, of course, sustainability to the environment, and so managing natural resources and so on.
Anybody else want to say a little bit more about what happened in your group, or do you feel like that's a good summary?
Probably a pretty good summary.
Okay. We had many wide-ranging discussion about ideas. There was a suggestion for sure not to schedule the gender sessions at the same time, and to try and space them out so that people who are interested in gender don't miss on some of the other topics. So that's tricky, but an interesting idea. Amplifying women's voices and maybe doing a skill building opportunity. So inviting journalists to talk about how to talk about these topics and what's missing in the typical coverage. Needing a targeted inclusion of women. Someone gave the idea that in their work, they specifically aim to have 40% women presenters as a target, and then at least some of those being under 30 years of age. But then also thinking about bringing in practitioners and academics together in the same space and having those conversations that are sometimes not as smooth, but important. Let's see, policy dialogue that includes calls to action that are outside of research space. So how do we meet this moment? Let's see, need to deliberately mount several sessions, like a panel with papers, roundtables that mix theory and practice, and that speak to the different conference themes, and specifically to have some gender themes that are all gender that would also help to stimulate participation in the gender interest group as well. So not just mainstream, have some mainstream, but also have some that are specifically just for gender. So those are some of the ideas that came out of our group. Are there any other ideas, or anybody want to comment on those?
I'm one of those terrible people who dropped out of the call when it went to breakout groups because my cat went missing in a storm, but she is fine. So it's actually really interesting to sort of loop back in here. And I wanted to pick up on one thread that I saw on the slide that you shared, Mary Ruth, that I am curious if this came up in either breakout group, but the skills session for non-gender people is something I'm very interested in. And I'm just sort of curious what that calls to mind for folks, if that came up in either group, what that could look like. Yeah, just leaving that there. So not answering your question, asking a new one.
I like it. That didn't come up in our group, but I would love to hear if people thought that would be of interest to non-gender people. Yeah, Carl is giving us the thumbs up. Does anybody have any particular interest in being part of that, leading / co-leading? Not at first, okay.
I think one thing to do is to kind of keep the ideas and kind of, there are people who can't join us now, people who have jumped off that might be able to do it. I think this, the training skills building, I think that would be really good. And we have kind of different formats. Some are 90 minutes, some are 3 hours, and we're exploring the possibility of having day-long formats. There's always, while we don't tend to have gender going up head-to-head scheduled at the same time as other gender events, it's like, but there's climate, there's indigenous, there's, it's like, it's really hard to choose. Yep. So I encourage people to keep that in mind when thinking about how long. But I would like to suggest kind of 2 formats for consideration. One is training. Well, 3. One is training. One is kind of the more formal conference, whether it's a roundtable or panel or poster. The third is a little different, and that is what we call a workshop. And it's not a workshop like training. Training's training. A workshop is to workshop an idea. So if there's something that you're developing or want to develop or want to explore, and so if there's, there's a space that you want to further dive into and you're not certain about how to do it or where to do it, this is, that might be an opportunity for something on gender, and to use the conference where you have everybody in the same room to kind of collaboratively co-design or co-create something more targeted. I know I'm being vague about what it is, but just to think about this as an opportunity, not only to kind of train people to share what you've learned, but to actually collaborate.
Yeah. Is there talk at all, Carl, of having like one time block where all of the gender interest group meet separately? Yeah.
Sorry, ask the question again. I thought you were going somewhere else.
I was thinking like between 10 and 11 a.m. all of the interest group meet together with their membership.
So we did that in The Hague at the third conference on Tuesday, which was kind of the day before the conference opened formally. And so the morning, well, is on Tuesday is, and I expect will be, when we do the trainings.
Right. Okay.
And there are some that probably will be longer.
Okay.
Whether that's on Tuesday or on Monday, we don't know. We did the interest groups all at the same time last time, and there were people who said, I'm interested in more than one group.
Right. Yeah.
And so there's talk about maybe splitting up the timing of the interest groups to reduce that overlap. We haven't figured out when that would be or how it would be, but that's something we're still considering.
Yes. It's all very tricky, I understand. Okay. Any other thoughts on collaborative projects, ideas? Okay.
Not to jump ahead a little bit, but too much. But I think there's also, if it's a struggle logistically always, to kind of find either have these events as part of the conference or even before, there's also, in the time between now and June, we could always through things like, the gender interest group, kind of have it maybe a series or something that is kind of a similarly, it wouldn't be the same level of impact there, but with the goal of kind of upskilling, I guess, non-gender folks could do a series there too, in something like the news.
Yeah. Well, that actually segues very nicely into our last poll, which is, and I realize we're a smaller group now, so this is a little harder, but oh, this is not the right slide there. So we are just wondering if people want to have some additional peer learning sessions between now and the conference, and if so, how many? Like 0 or 1 to 3 or 4 to 7? So if you could just vote on that, and maybe we'll share this poll with the entire group and get some other feedback from people who weren't able to attend today and see what people think. But we're just trying to gauge whether people will show up if we do some additional peer learning sessions or maybe skill building sessions or something like that in the lead up to the conference. I'll just give you all a minute or two to fill that out. I am loving the little bubbles, the little dots. Balls, maybe they're balls. Very fun way of doing a survey like this. So I'm seeing yes, I'm seeing no no's, so that's interesting, and mostly yes, 1 to 3 sessions. Okay, that's great. Feel free to keep voting on that. And then the very final question is, well, I'll just maybe wait another 30 seconds here while people complete their voting. Okay, then I would say the very last one was, is there anybody in the group who would be willing to present their work in these 1 to 3 sessions maybe that we do between now and the conference? Just, this is a simple, yes, I strongly want to, or agree, and no, I don't want to. So just a quick poll to see if people are interested in doing something before the conference. So this is not at the conference. And then the follow-up question is, if yes, if you are interested at least in some extent, then we would love it if you could reach out to Natalia and I think you all have our emails now, and let us know what your thoughts are. I'll put this in an email as well, but would love to hear from people specifically if they want to present their work between now and the conference. Okay. All right. So finally, I just wanted to quickly go over, and I need to share a different screen now. Oh no, I'm on the right screen. Yeah. Oops. Okay. So we're just going to go over the how to submit for those who are not familiar. And Maddie, if you wouldn't mind leading us through this slide.
Sure. So in the chat, I've just put the link to the proposal form. And so if you log in or have a EnPAx login, you can submit it through there. And if not, if there's any kind of issues with that form or any logins, or if you don't have one, there's also the following email for you to send any thoughts or proposals to Carl.me if this is not up to date. But yeah, as the slide says, the submission or abstract submission deadline is October 6th with a rough word count of 300 words, and that is just three full-page abstracts, and then looking to kind of integrate gender in one of the conference themes. So if you have any thoughts there, please contact that email.
Sorry,
Yeah.
just to be clear, the submitting, yeah, okay, all the stuff before submission, this is all up to you guys. The conference organizing committee, they just kind of get the submissions and then have them reviewed by the scientific committee. So, I think this makes a lot of sense. I just want to be clear, there's whatever the gender interest group does and how and to help coordinate and stimulate. The other thing is that this is for a panel, that there are also possibilities of roundtables. And in our group, we had talked about the possibility of a roundtable on monitoring and evaluation, for example. And so you could do the same thing. That has only one abstract. Or if you wanted to do a workshop or a training, those are all kind of different ways of thinking about things. So I just want to encourage you, don't limit yourself to panels. If that's what you submit, that's fine. But there are, I think that the different ways of engaging, including around the arts, this is really, people react differently to the different modalities.
That's great. Thank you, Carl. And Rehab?
I just have few questions. First, this is open to the UN as well, I imagine. And second, for example, if I'm doing panel discussion or if I'm doing a roundtable, I should suggest also for other panelists, or I suggest other people who will sit on the roundtable. Will this be like the cost will be covered by like we should bear our individual cost, or it will be I don't know, covered by the hosting university, so that when I discuss with other panelists. And the last thing, when you say GIG, you mean this group, right? So I develop it and I share it with you, you review it, and then I submit it through the link. Okay.
You are welcome to do that, but you do not have to go through us at all. That is totally optional, but we would be happy to collaborate and give you our thoughts if you think that would be helpful, but that's totally optional. And I will leave the other questions to Carl, who is unmuted himself.
Yeah. And I would say that, the possibility of engaging with the gender interest group in your proposal would be especially useful if you want to do a panel or a roundtable and you've got an idea for one or two speakers and you're looking for others. So I think the gender interest group could be very useful in helping to identify others. Regarding costs, the basic approach is there will be a conference. Everybody pays their way to get there, pays the registration fee. Sometimes people, the registration fee is covered by, a partner. And we are very much encouraging institutions that can to support participants from developing countries and to support students and young professionals, because this is, but ultimately it's a question of how does this person get there? How do they pay for their hotel? and how do they cover the registration fee. The registration fee is, we haven't set it yet. Last year or last time it was $295 for members of the association, $375 for non-members. It will probably be higher, but not dramatically.
Okay.
Does that answer your questions?
Yes, so travel and registration and all will be covered by the participants.
Either
right?
by the participants, but maybe participants broadly, so that if if I had a project with partners in Colombia, I might be funding my Colombian partners to come or something like that.
Got you. Yeah. Okay.
And we will have travel grants, and we're trying to raise money for that. But there's always so much more need than resources. So it's something that is available. It tends to be modest, and it tends to be a modest number of people.
Yeah. Thank you.
Any other questions? And I apologize. Yeah, the sharing with the gender interest group or the gig members for feedback, that's totally optional. I should have put optional there. You do not have to take that step. But any other thoughts or questions on the process? Okay, then I think that is it. I'm going to put this link in the chat in case people are here who don't know that we have a gender interest group newsletter that goes out once a month, and Maddie is our extraordinary administrator of that process. And we also welcome guest posts. We've been having lots of guest posts recently. So if you'd like to write a spotlight for that newsletter, please let us know. And we also take suggestions for events that you're having or publications you've already published that you want to share with the group, etc. So there's a whole form that you can fill out to submit those things to us every month so that we can share them with the entire group. And you can also join the gender interest group through the website as well. Again, please let us know if you're interested in speaking, doing one of the peer learning sessions. And then hopefully there will be many of you who are drafting and submitting abstracts for panels and other things in the next couple of weeks, as it's about a month away before the deadline. So I think that's it. And with that, I will give everybody 6 minutes back of their day. And thank you all so much for coming. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for hosting.
Bye-bye. Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Monica.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
All right.
Okay.
Do you maybe want to stop the recording and then kick out this read AI? I can't do it as I'm